Hi guys, it's Sam here. I'm just giving you a brief recap of the sermon. For most of you this will be from Sunday. For the 9:45 guys it'll be from last Sunday. The sermon about Gideon in Judges chapter 6 and a few questions. I'll try and be really brief so you've got as much time as possible to chat. I'll give a little summary, so if you weren't able to hear the sermon, you'll get a sense of it. Obviously I can't cover everything, but hopefully you'll have an idea what it is we're talking about. So I began by talking about the need to locate ourselves and ask that question, where are we at the moment? Where are we in history, in the world, globally, nationally, the church, Gateway Church, where are we? And we read from Judges 6 about a time when Israel had entered the land and everything was supposed to be great, but actually things turned out to be pretty tricky for them. They were struggling. They were being attacked. It was an anxious time. And I began to draw parallels there. Spoke about the anxious time we're living in, a time of rapid change, of polarization in politics, for example, a struggling economy, a war in Ukraine, and many other things we could talk about. And I put it to you that it seems like we are at an end of an era, as Mark Sayers called it, a grey zone, a time where we might not even know the battle we're fighting, what the territory looks like. A time when the values of the last 70 years, which happened to coincide with Queen Elizabeth II and her death, these values that she has sort of represented are being challenged. And just as Israel had assimilated to their culture and begun to worship other idols, I challenged us and suggested to us that the church globally, even maybe in our family and in Gateway, has begun to take on aspects of culture. I talked about the consumer culture and the therapeutic culture that is so part of the world that we live in, and how they've affected worship to make worship focused on me, not on God, to make worship and the experience of being part of a church about my happiness and comfort rather than the glory of God. Well, in the second part, I spoke about Gideon, where you find him also in Judges chapter 6, if you want to look back at that. And Gideon's hiding during this anxious time, and it's so easy for us to be hiding at this time that we're living in. But God coaxes Gideon out. He calls him to repent, and he calls him to finally fully meet with God and worship God. And he calls him to start a mission with his own life and his own family. You see, Gideon's mission, first of all, is to remove the Asherah pole to Baal, the worship to Baal, from his dad's house, and instead to set up an altar to God. And I challenged us that for us in this time, we need to begin with our own lives and our own families and the things that are immediate to us. I challenged us that for us, an Asherah pole is something or a place that we go when we're anxious instead of God. It's a place where we go when we're anxious instead of God. And I asked us to think about what that place might be for you. Finished challenging us that it is a costly Christianity that we're called to in this time and in this era. And it's a time to examine our own worship, to ask, have we assimilated? It's a time to stop hiding, to speak up, to remove the idols from our lives and return to God and worship him. So loads of ideas in there. I'm going to give you 3 questions now. I'm going to say them all together, and then I'll do them one at a time in case that's useful for you to pause it. So 3 questions. The first one, in what ways does our anxious culture affect you? It would be great if you could try to be honest about that. You may want to do that in smaller groups. Number 2, do you think that you or we have assimilated? Do you think that you or we as a church have assimilated? And thirdly, is there an Asherah pole or stronghold that God is calling you to remove? And what is God calling you to do about that? So I'll read each of those again, and if you'd like to pause them, you can. So question number 1, in what ways does our anxious culture affect you? Number 2, do you think that you or we as a church have assimilated? You might want to talk about that. And thirdly, is there an Asherah pole or stronghold that God is calling you to remove from your life? And what is God calling you to do about it? I hope that you have had a good time discussing that, and see you soon. Don't forget to get some time to pray as well. Bye.